All right, here's the final version of the artwork that we'll create over the course of this chapter. But before we start things off here, I want to give you a sense of how it's put together. As you can see, it's ultimately a combination of circles and rectangles and stars. And I also took advantage of power duplication. That is, I scaled and rotated and flipped objects multiple times in a row. So in this movie, we're going to do a little bit of a recap of power duplication. And I'm going to pass along a new trick as well. So I'm going to switch over to our starter document here. And I want this version of the document to remain aligned with the final so that we can track our progress. But I also want to create another window into this document that allows me to zoom in and out. And I'll create that new window by going up to the window menu and choosing the new window command. And that will give me a second, seemingly identical version of the document that's called, as you can see here in the title tab, mostpaths.ai:2. Which makes you think it's some kind of duplicate, but it's not. It's just a second window into the same illustration. All right, just to demonstrate how it works, I'll go ahead and drag the tab up and over here so that we can see it at the same time that we're seeing the artwork in the background. In other words, I'm making this new window float. And I'll go ahead and drag its edge over to the right here to make the window a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to zoom in a couple of clicks until I'm seeing the illustration at 200%. And I'm going to press Control Y or Command Y on a Mac to switch to the preview mode. Now notice if I click over here inside of the first window, mostpaths.ai:1, that makes that window active, but it doesn't bring it in front of the floater, which is nice so that I can see both of them no matter what at the same time. All right, we're going to start things off here by duplicating this little white circle so that it appears all the way around the edge of this larger brown circle. So what I need to do, of course, is switch over to the rotate tool, which you can get by pressing the R key. And I want to make sure that my little origin point isn't in the center of the circle. That wouldn't make any darn sense. Instead, it needs to be in the center of this God's nose right here. So I'm going to switch over to my second window by clicking in it. And I'll press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and click in the center of that nose. And I can see the center of that nose up close and personal because I'm zoomed in and because I'm looking at the illustration in the preview mode. So I'll go ahead and Alt click to bring up the Rotate dialog box. And I really don't know how far I need to rotate this circle in order to make it work. So what I'm going to do is press Shift down arrow. At least I know I need a negative value. And you can see that the circle rotates over, in my case, negative 20 degrees because I pressed Shift down arrow twice. And now I'll just press the down arrow key a few more times here until I get to negative 24 degrees, and that looks just about right. And I can see that it's right over here in the first window as well. So both windows are tracking my progress. All right, so I know I want a total of 4 circles inside of this base, which means 1 original and 3 duplicates, which means I need to take negative 24 and divide it by 3. So I'll enter /3 like so and press the tab key. That's negative 8 degrees, fine. And I'll click on the copy button in order to make a copy of that circle, and that looks just exactly right here inside the preview mode in the first window. So then I'll press Control D or Command D on the Mac a couple of times in order to fill out those circles. All right, now I'll press the V key to switch back to my black arrow tool, and I'll shift click on the other 3 circles in order to select all 3. And because I'm going to have to duplicate these guys a few times here, I'm going to group them together. It's just going to make them easier to select later. So I'll go up to the Object menu and choose the Group command, or of course I could press Control G or Command G on a Mac. All right, now I'll press the R key to switch back to the Rotate tool, and I'll Alt-click or Option-click in the center of that God's nose once again. This time I'll change the angle to negative 45 degrees. I just know that's right. And I'll press the Tab key, and sure enough, that puts the circles where they need to be, and I'll click on the Copy button in order to create a copy. Now, I'll press the V key to switch back to my black arrow tool, shift-click on the first group of circles, and now group all of these circles together by pressing Control G or Command G again. Again, this is just a little bit of tidiness here so I don't run into problems when I'm trying to group things together later. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make my window a little tighter so I can see the circles in the background. Now, you might think that I would continue to duplicate those circles by pressing Control D or Command D on the Mac over and over again, but actually, that kind of throws off the alignment where the stars are concerned. So instead, what I need to do is switch over to the Reflect tool, which you can also get by pressing the O key. And I'll Alt-click or Option-click right there on the center point of the God's nose once again. This time to bring up the Reflect dialog box. I don't want, at this point, to duplicate the circles across the vertical axis. Instead, I want the axis to be set to horizontal so that I move the circles down, as you can see here. I keep having to move that dialog box on screen because I've got a very small screen to work with here. Now click the copy button. In order to create that copy, I'll press the V key to switch back to the black arrow tool. I'll shift click on the top group of circles, and I'll press Control G or Command G again in order to group them all. So I've got now groups nested inside of groups, nested inside of groups, which is just fine. It's not going to present me with any problems at all. All right, now I'll press the O key to switch back to the reflect tool. Alt or Option click in the center of the God's nose, switch the axis to vertical this time, and click copy. And I've now managed to copy all of these circles, as you can see here. All right, now I want to combine all these circles into a group. So I'll press the V key to switch to the black arrow tool, shift click on the right group of circles, and press Control G or Command G on the Mac in order to group them all. All right, now what I want to be able to do is rename this group. That presents a little bit of a problem because my window is in the way of the layers panel. So I'll go ahead and move the window over, making sure that I'm not dropping it into the other windows. And then I'll twirl open this calendar layer right here, and I'll scroll down until I see a selected meatball. There it is, next to the word group. I'll double click on the word group and change it to eggs because they're white. What the heck? And that'll just help me know what they are. All right, now what I want to do, go and move this guy back over here. I want to duplicate this group of squares right here. So I'll click in one and shift click in the other two with the black arrow tool to select them all. I want them to be easier to select in the future, so I'll press Control G or Command G on the Mac in order to group them together. Then I'll press the R key to switch back to the Rotate tool. I'll switch back to the second window by clicking in it. And I'll press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and click in the center of the God's nose. And it turns out that negative 45 degrees, which was my last rotation, is exactly what I need. So I'll just go ahead and click on the copy button. And now with that guy selected, I'll Alt click or Option click in the center of the nose again and change the angle value to 90 degrees, press the Tab key. That moves the squares down to this location, which is where I want them. I'll click the copy button. And I've now created all of the squares on the left-hand side. I don't have them over here on the right-hand side, as you can see, so I need to make them. And I'll do that by pressing the V key to switch to the black arrow tool, shift clicking on the other two groups of squares there so that all three are selected. Then I'll press the O key to switch back to the reflect tool, click in the second window, Alt click or Option click in the center of the nose, make sure that the axis is set to vertical, and click the copy button in order to create a copy of those squares. I assume they're there, but might as well move this guy out of the way to make sure. Yep, there they are. All right, and then I'll grab my black arrow tool once again. I'll shift click on one of those left-hand squares, which I forgot to group in advance, so now I'm going to have to select each one of them independently, and I accidentally selected that circle. This is why it's so great to go ahead and group in advance when you're working this way. All right, now I have all the square sets selected, except for the top and bottom groups, which are different. And then I'll press Control G or Command G on the Mac in order to group them. And then finally, I want to go ahead and create this uber group of outside squares. So I'll shift click on the top group, I'll shift click on the bottom group, and I'll shift click on any one of these beige, not ellipses, but rather rectangles in order to select them as well. So all of the outer rectangles and squares are selected. Now I'll move my window out of the way here, and I'll go ahead and drop it so it's consolidated with the other ones. And I'll scroll up to find that these guys need to be grouped together. Didn't group them. So I'll press Control G or Command G on the Mac in order to create this uber group right there. And I'll go ahead and double click on it and call it outer squares because that's what I want to name my group. And that is it. And that, folks, is a review of a few transformations and power duplication functions, as well as an introduction to the fact that you can create multiple windows into the same document. And by the way, one more note. If I go up to the File menu and choose the Save command, I save the fact that I have multiple views into this document. So the next time I open it up, I will have not one window, but two different views going at the same time.